Hey there, how's it going? Shay and I wish you well. Um, he may be doing a little grooming here in the background, but I figured you might want to see him. He's doing great. He's a sweetie. I wanted to come on because I've had some interesting dreams this week, and also just because what a week it's been. I have a feeling that if you're watching this video, chances are you felt the same way I did on Monday, which was like you got pushed down a flight of stairs or punched repeatedly in the stomach. And in talking about it with my mom, we both we both felt it was surreal. And there have been a few surreal moments throughout this whole somewhat revolutionary time in the country's history. Um, a few moments that felt like, is this really happening? And that was one of them. And I really felt awful for 3 days. I really just felt sick about it, and then finally kind of started to get my head around. Okay, well, they've told us they've played their cards now, so it it further clarifies what needs to be done when, God willing, the Democrats win everything in November. They kind of have to win everything in November. They have to. Biden has to win the White House. Congress has to go completely to the Democrats so that a lot of things can occur, including expanding the Supreme Court. And the injustice of it all is so profound because those the last two Supreme Court seats were essentially stolen, engineered by McConnell. That's what he does. And so this cheating that the GOP has been up to for such a long time finally bore fruit for them. Because if those two seats had been flipped, they would have never been able to get to five to vote for this ridiculous concept of almost complete immunity from prosecution for presidents. That is not. It so goes against the core of the Constitution that there is no king, that no one is above the law. It is so blatantly unconstitutional and in such bad faith. It is troubling and hard to believe at times, and yet it is so. And since it is so, we got to fight from here. So just keep the prayers coming. Keep that energy going in the right direction as much as you can. I have to say the same thing to myself. So I prayed a lot in from after the decision was reached, and I was glad that even though I felt very crushed by the decision, that I was still able to connect in my own limited way with Spirit when I would lie down to pray. I did some praying in some afternoons, but at night too, before bed, I could feel the presences in my third eye. I could feel the pressure in my forehead, and I could see the swirling colors. And I was asking Spirit, please be with us, and are you with us, and are you there? And I was getting what I call the head bobs, where I feel pressure in my third eye, and when I ask a question, I can sometimes get an answer from Spirit in the form of this very gentle, like, head bobbing for yes and for no. And that's something that's described in both of my books as my sort of limited way of being able to communicate with Spirit. I don't have the clairaudience on a consistent basis that many of the more developed psychics do, which I think is awesome. And I love, I may have to really kind of get back to thinking about how can I get closer to that? Is it even possible? Because it would be great to get more information sometimes than what I do get. So it was nice to know that I was being heard. I felt heard when I was praying, and dreams have been the consistent way in which I've really felt the affirmation of Spirit and the universe. And last night's dream was very much in that vein. That's why I wanted to share it. It was strongly positive. It was just just to start, like sometimes a dream just has a feeling to it. You know how that goes. This entire dream just felt like supportive, kind, elevating, fun, playful, light. And what it was about was I don't know why. I don't understand why I always, or at least in the last year or two, have had so many dreams about where I'm on Saturday Night Live. I'm a guest on Saturday Night Live, and sometimes I'm in the sketches, and sometimes I'm hanging out with the cast, and sometimes I'm trying out for the show, and every time I'm on, I'm always the old guy compared to them. They're the young bucks, and I'm kind of there in a role. And sometimes I've performed on the show, but I don't know why Saturday Night Live, unless it's meant to suggest, like, I don't know if it's meant to suggest that everything is a show, like we're living kind of in a show, and maybe not to take it all so seriously, which is easier said than done given the circumstances of our politics. But regardless of that, in this dream, yeah, there were few different things. One funny thing about the dream was there was one part where I was hanging out with the Saturday Night Live cast, but then I was much younger again. I was more like I looked around the age of 20 when I had really wild curly hair, and I had a lot more of it all over my head. And I was hanging out with, I think I was hanging out with Federico Fellini too, the Italian film director who I really enjoy. He was there in a younger form, and I was there, and we were like hanging out with the cast. But anyway, that was a funny part of it, but not the main reason I wanted to mention it. The main theme of the dream was in the sketches that were being performed on the show, and in the private time I was spending with cast members when we weren't on the air. What kept happening were synchronicities. I would be talking to someone about I can't remember the specifics, but some kind of event or some kind of thing on my mind, and then as soon as I would say it, something would happen that was completely synchronistic. Like, for example, I don't know. I mean, this is a common example, and this has happened to me many times in day-to-day life. And those of you who know me have even had these kind of synchronicities with me, where someone mentions, maybe you think of another person who's not in the room. You're like, oh, hey, how's Kristen doing or whatever, and then you get a text from Kristen, you get a phone call from Kristen, or Kristen walks by, and things like that were happening in the dreams. And I remember talking with one cast member about their a deceased family member that they had. And I was saying, like, your family member is around. Just because they have passed doesn't mean they're not around. And then, like, I think maybe the person that I was talking to did see their relative, or we both saw the relative. And the dream seemed to be like a series of synchronicities, one after the other, where I was with these young people, and I was showing each of them how I wasn't even trying consciously, because it's hard to consciously make a synchronicity happen, but I was showing them, talking about synchronicity, and then a synchronicity would happen. So the evidence was coming along in the dream at the same time that I was telling them what I believed. And so this just created this feeling of, like, yes, things are playing out properly, even though it may not seem like it. And that's a little hard even for me to believe at this very moment. But being in an existential crisis that we are now in, there's no other choice really but to believe and to maintain hope. And I have taken a lot of comfort in the continued readings and presence of many of the psychics in the extended community that we probably all watch, or at least you watch some of them, like Kim Carey, like Debbie with Freebird Spirit, Sterling, psychic medium. who else have I watched? I watched Debbie with I can't remember the other woman's name. Debbie and they did a joint. Debbie and Lisa did a joint show the other day. Kim's show was really great, and I appreciate their encouragement and Linda G. Comanche Psychic, of course. I appreciate their calmness and their composure, and I don't think it's any accident that most of the people leading the way right now are women. I think that it is part of the larger, broader field where the divine feminine is kind of stepping up to correct, really, an overcompensation by the divine masculine to control women. That's really what seems to me to underlie so much of what's going on. And really, most religions in the world, countries that are founded as theocracies, religious nations, it's always about control. It's always about control. It's not enough for some people just to coexist. They feel the need to dominate and to subject others to their ideology, to put them under thumb, because they get off on the idea of control. They think that they think it makes them gods. The country's leaders try to elevate themselves to the power of a creator, of a god, of a god on earth. And one of my deepest held beliefs is that we're born with free will from the creator, and that those who try to deny the free will of others are committing like one of the gravest injustices that you can commit against another being. And so they're always destined to fall, but it doesn't mean they can't cause a lot of damage in the meantime, and people have to fight for their rights, and this is where we are. So anyway, but it was more the tone of my dream that I want to share, because it's a little light on details, just that it was synchronicity after synchronicity, and I just woke up thinking, okay, yeah, that feels nice. And there was another dream. I think I may have even had it a day or two before the Supreme Court decision was released. And it was a funny dream. It was a strange dream in that I was dreaming about having a near-death experience. But I don't think that I actually was. But it was very close to what I imagine one might be like, because I was kind of like sort of semi-crossed over. And I was sort of in a review of my life, like events from my life were being reviewed with me. And Shay was right there, actually, too, which was funny. And I remember being in kind of different spaces that didn't seem to, that seemed like infinite spaces. I was in rooms where, you could kind of, look beyond the room, and you could feel that the room was, almost like in the middle of space. So a place that was somewhere and almost like everywhere or nowhere at the same time, which is, I know it's a contradiction, but impossible to define spaces, at least from the perception of human experience at this time. And one of the funny parts in the dream was, it did seem like I was maybe going to cross over, again, only in the dream. Okay. So as this was happening, Shay was with me, and I heard his thoughts, and I heard him, and he had a funny low voice, and it was a human voice. It was and I felt his thought, and it was kind of like, yep, I did what I was supposed to do here with you, and I'm gonna, return to my collective on this side, but I'll see you soon, kind of thing. And he sort of zipped from my arms right into this, what looked kind of like a pod, almost like a cloud-shaped pod with a kind of mouth on it, and he zipped right into it, like it was a container of spirits, animal spirits, I presume. And that was a funny moment to see him zip off like that. But not long after that, in the dream, um, I was told that I could go back, and that I was kind of like, it was almost like, it was almost like by partly dying, I could set myself I could set myself free from certain worries and expectations. Like this was almost like bonus time, and I was encouraged to think of it as like make the best use of the rest of your life. Like don't get bogged down on things that are not important. And it seemed to coincide with then almost what happened after in real life with the Supreme Court decision, where I felt like after that decision came out, it's like all my other worries, my daily worries or my small concerns, really didn't seem significant at all. Because the biggest concern is freedom. So no matter what's going on economically, whatever, financial things I might be dealing with, whatever, personal things I might have, like relationships with people, friendships, where I, not always feeling like I've got as far as I wanted to get in in my career as a musician and as a writer. Honestly, both in the dream and kind of then after the Supreme Court decision came out, it was like none of that mattered at all anymore, because those were just small concerns. And this is so much bigger and so much more fundamental to everything. The future of this planet, in my opinion, hangs in the balance. Not to be too, not to put too much on it, but I think that it does, because you can't have a crippled democracy here and have democracy be strong in the rest of the world. It won't work, I don't think. And that's why somehow we have to course correct, and somehow, whether it takes years or decades, that Supreme Court decision has to be nullified. It can be done. It's been done before in the past. Dred Scott is an example that of the Supreme Court reversing its own decision later in time. It's also possible to change a Supreme Court decision with a constitutional amendment, though that's a much higher threshold for voting. So the more likely result is a future Supreme Court rectifying this decision. And that's where we got to be in our heads. And so, like I said, in the dream of the NDE, it mirrored what was coming in our lives, in my life, in the next couple of days, and that everything that was sort of trivial just had to fall away because it was just so not important. And that's really how I feel. So it kind of freed me up from some of the things I had been otherwise, I wouldn't say worried about, but if I was thinking too much about small stuff, it snapped me back into what's important. So it cleaned me out. And one of the interesting things that happened at the end of the NDE dream was I was looking out into space, and I think it was just before they were going to send me back, and I saw at a great distance what looked like a bunch of stars, like kind of to my right or to my right and to my left and to my right, and like maybe like a cluster of 6 or 7 or 8, like not a ton, in a black part of space on each side. And then these stars started to move and swirl. And that's when I thought that they might not be stars, but they might even just be energy forms. They might be souls. Or they might actually be stars and souls. Stars with souls, or, it's hard to describe. But they were alive in some fashion. And then on both sides, they started to merge. And that made me think of like sort of like the idea that we hear from the psychics about us all being one, like all part of one collective. And it's a nice thought to believe that we're more a part of each other than it seems. Like we're in this reality we often feel very separate from people, but really we're much closer to being joined or overlapping, or however you want to think about it, than we think. And sometimes I get that experience when I perform too. Like, for example, I just got back. I'm a little sweaty still. I just got back from performing at a farmer's market here in Buffalo, a very popular farmer's market. I played from 9:30 a.m. to 11. I just brought my acoustic guitar, no amplifier, and I just sang underneath the tree. And we have a big farmers market on Bidwell Avenue, and I don't know, there were probably 500, 600, 700, 800 people there, and it goes on for hours, and they come all day. So it's sort of like a social event. It's also the shopping because there's so many vendors. And when I got there, I didn't feel like super connected to what I was singing yet because my voice has been giving me a little grief with allergies. But then once I warmed up into my voice and also just sort of settling into the space that I was in, then I started to feel more connectivity with the audience too. And then the audience started to clearly feel more connectivity with me. More people stopped and watched and listened and put money in my tip bucket, and kids were dancing, and kids always make eye contact with me. They really love to be acknowledged by a performer, it seems, and so I always do, and I talk to them a lot too, because I don't get to play for kids that often. So it brought up this feeling again of greater connectivity, and is like the stars that I saw at the end of my NDE dream, where like they kind of swirled around and merged. So whatever that meant, whether that was stars or souls or both, it was another symbol, important symbol of good things. And I hope that in relaying those dreams, even though I maybe didn't give you as much detail as you would like, because I can't remember as much of each one as I would like, it's the feeling that I'm trying to impart. That's what I'm going for. So that's where I'll leave it for now. I'm going to come back and do a book reading, a next book reading very soon. But I hope you're well. I hope you're taking good care of your mental well-being. I feel like after that, at the end of that third day, when I finally kind of got my head back around it, then my fear of what had happened turned to some anger, but also the desire for action, and not to roll over, and not to give up, and not to lose joy. Critically, not to lose joy. And so I'm getting there. I'm getting there a day at a time. And the last few days, when I have been out with friends and stuff to do things, I've been mindful of it and properly appreciative of the company I've had. I hadn't seen the fireworks in a few years, so on the 4th of July, I went with a friend to the fireworks in one of the northern suburbs of Buffalo called Lewiston, and it was great. And it was enough. I appreciated what I saw, what we experienced, and I didn't need it to be more than it was. It was exactly enough. So I hope that's helpful in some way, even though I do feel like I'm rambling, because I ramble. It's hard to do these videos all in one take, because your mind goes so many places. So I'll leave it here. I'll come back soon for a book reading. Thanks for watching and listening. And if you feel like it, in the comments, I'd love to know what you've been doing to kind of keep yourself in the right headspace. Like I said, the prayers are working for me, and now the dreams are starting to back up the prayers, and that's a good place for me to be, because I actually have had a bunch of synchronicities in the last bunch of days, and some of my friends have too. In fact, with one friend, my tenant, had a synchronicity, and she doesn't have that many synchronicities, but she had one last week, and she's had more since she's been my tenant, which is I hope means it's here, in this environment. But she was going out or something, just going out on the block, because we live down from all these bars and restaurants, and she was trying to choose a shirt, and she picked a shirt of a band that she liked that she hadn't seen in years. And when she got to one of the bars down the block, somebody said, "Oh, are you going to go see them tonight?" Because this band from Cleveland was in town. But she had no idea. She just randomly picked the shirt and went out. So then when she found out, she's like, "Oh, wow." So, and then it was at another bar right here on our block that these guys from Cleveland were playing. So she went over to the show. And so when she told me about it, she was all excited. And I was like, "Yeah, that's a direct hit. That's a ding ding right on the money." And like I said, I had some too that were really nice, and I think that's more evidence that we are supported. That's my hope. Okay, be well, take care. But tell me how you're taking care of yourself, what you're doing to kind of keep yourself balanced. I'd be curious to know, because maybe I could try those things too. All right, take care.